You
Yeah.
cook. They're doing the AI legwork. It's
Thank
fine.
you.
You
Exactly.
know?
All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna let him know that actually.
Yeah. See?
That's the
See?
trade-off.
That's I'm here to help. That's
Thank you.
that's about. So
Appreciate
yeah, I don't like a lot of the work that you do now. I know you're a funeral director, but you have a lot of other things that are in your wheelhouse now, right? Like
I
tell me a
do.
little bit about that.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I mean, it's stuff is happening like literally all at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's not for lack of trying. I mean, I put in a lot of legwork. I've been having to like get super outside of my comfort zone, trying to self-promote and,
Yeah.
pitch myself to people, which isn't something that I am at all comfortable doing, and also not really something I've ever had to do before. I
Yeah.
guess. But so
Yeah.
that's like kind of new. But yeah, I've got still funeral directing. I recently was acquired as a certified grief specialist for the Grief app, which is this really great startup. They've got a super cool
Mm.
approach toward handling grief. And the whole pitch behind it is kind of like, what do you do at 2 a.m. when you're grieving? Because that's the time.
Mm.
It's like, well, who are you going to call? Like Ghostbusters?
Right.
Your friends are probably sleeping. Um, who are you going to talk to? You're not
Yeah.
going to talk to your therapist at 2 a.m. Like you need somewhere to go with these things. So we create workbooks actually to help people walk through the things that they're going through, very specific to what they're dealing with. But yeah, so
Yeah.
there's that. I'm also teaching some webinars coming up too. I've got one with the Center for Death Education in August, another one in New Zealand. I wish I was going, but I'm not actually physically going to
Not
be there.
yet. Not
Not yet,
yet.
but I will be doing that in August as well. And just had a couple of courses on my website accredited to for continuing education credits for people who need to seek out their licensure. So the
Mhm.
educational component of stuff is coming together pretty nicely. I just finished up my master's degree in thanatology too. So the super
Wow.
cool thing about
Congratulations.
Thank you. The super cool thing about that is, so I have degrees in psychology and in funeral service, and thanatology really kind of marries those two things together. So it's got the death experience coming from being a licensed funeral director, but also ties in the psychology component, which is actually kind of what I was hoping more to tap into. So it's a
Yeah.
really good thing for that.
It's cool. Now, I mean, I remember like, you're working at Mass General, like right around COVID, right? And
I was,
then
yeah.
you started moving into funeral directing. Like, how was this path to get you to here?
Yeah,
You know?
it's funny that you say, like, when people find out that I worked in healthcare before I worked in death care, it's usually the immediate, like, kind of like the superhuman. I'm gonna probably say superhuman. I don't mean like the Hulk, like I mean just like very human.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Uh, so people's immediate response to that is like, oh my God, like how did you go from healthcare into this? And then they kind of pause, and then it's like, actually, no. Yeah, no, that actually
Right.
does make sense. And so I've wanted to be a funeral director since I was 9 years old, since I was a little kid, creepy little kid. I knew I wanted to do it. That was always going to be the thing. It took me a while to get here. I had to make a lot of really terrible decisions for myself before I started making better ones. And I had to get myself to a place where if I put my hands on it, I could hold on to it. And it took a long time to get there, even though this was always going to be the thing that I was going to do. So I
Yeah.
worked in healthcare. I studied respiratory therapy for a while, and so I was doing that. And I was working in healthcare during peak COVID times, like
Mm.
peak COVID times. And my unit was the one where people don't generally survive. So that was already hard enough. And then really just got catapulted into this like what the hell? Like we don't have a blueprint for this thing. We don't know what to do here. Like the hospital, everything became negative pressure rooms, and it turned into like such a world that we weren't really familiar with so
Yeah.
quickly. I saw a lot of people have to say goodbye and get last rites on an iPad because they couldn't be in the room with their people when they were dying. Um, 40-year-old people who were dying in my unit who just ran marathons like 2 weeks beforehand. The gentleman I'm
Oh my
talking about
God.
specifically, they actually he did survive one of them, and he was just an incredible case. And the New York Times actually did an interview on him, which was really great. They did an article on him because it's such a moving story. I mean, literal goosebumps thinking about it.
Yeah.
But so I was doing that, and I had finished. I had got a degree in psychology in 2015.
Yeah.
15 on that one. And then I decided that I was gonna just go for it. I was gonna go back to school for funeral directing. At that point, I felt like I kind of sort of like had my feet firm enough that I felt like if I went for it, I could probably get it and I could probably do well with it. But I had to go through a lot to get to that point, and it was a
Yeah.
total pass off experience. So I called. It's like it's kind of funny. So when I was young, I was desperate to talk to funeral directors. Nobody would talk to me. I had no friends, no family, no nothing in this industry, and this is a very closed door industry.
Mm.
So I squawked enough at the Malden Chamber of Commerce in middle school at a career expo, and they were just like, "Did everybody talk to somebody they want to talk to?" And I'm like, "Well, no. Like everybody was like an accountant or something lame. I didn't talk to anybody to talk to. Least of all a funeral director. Like I didn't see
Hmm.
a person I wanted to talk to." So somebody did take interest in me in that regard, and she actually put me in contact. Excuse me, allergies. Um, she actually did put me in contact with a funeral director, super grumpy guy who just turned out to be a really great friend, who I actually still know today. I was 11 when I met him, when he
Oh,
finally
it's
agreed to
amazing.
like sit down with me, and he was a bit of a mentor for me. And then I trailed off big time when I was making those really terrible decisions. And then I kind of came back to him and I gave him a call and he was like, "Look, I have no work for you. I'm not busy at all. You can see how slow my funeral home is. Well, why don't you call this guy who does transfers? All he does is removals all the time. And, that could be like your foot in the door. You can start networking." From that, I landed my apprenticeship and things just kind of fell into place in like a decent way. But I would say it was about 2.5 years into like this dream career, like this thing that I just revered my entire life. It was like 2.5 years deep, and I was like, fuck it, like this isn't. I don't know if it's maybe the job's not the thing, maybe the people aren't the thing, maybe it's the coworkers. It could have been anything, and I had no idea, but I didn't want to believe that it was the actual career that I spent my entire life leading up to. So I was like, okay, you can burn it to the ground and you can dance on the ashes and you can go back to healthcare and you'll be fine.
Absolutely.
Or you can try to find a way to connect to this. You can try to find a way to tuck more into this. So, what's an aspect of what you're doing right now that you didn't expect that you were going to enjoy so much? And for me, it was dealing with the messy family life up in the front of the house. I always, targeted myself as being an embalmer, and just being hidden away in the shadows, which like emotionally, like that's kind of still like my preference. I still prefer the
Right.
shadows, but that has not changed. But I started to notice that I was kind of connecting with people in like a much different way. So I was like, well, this could be a thing. This could be a thing. So I decided that, I mean, I'm always going to go back to school if I don't know what to do with myself. And I'm like, well, I don't have a
Hear
master's
you.
degree yet, so I guess I could just spend a lot of money on that.
Yeah.
So went back for thanatology and very, very quickly stumbled onto this like level of kind of connection and connectivity that I didn't really have before. I didn't really know how to cross the cultural barriers with people and start to understand the way that they grieve through the lens of their culture, through the lens of how they grew up. And my funeral
Mm.
home is a really, really great training ground for that kind of thing because there's nobody who doesn't walk through that door. Like it just absolutely anybody. It's very interesting. It's very colorful at times, which is why I like it so
Hmm.
much in that area,
Yeah.
downtown Lynn, because it's rarely dull. And I started to notice that I was being able to connect with people on like a much different level, and I started to really enjoy that. And I noticed that I was connecting with my job a lot more and with myself a lot more too. So then that kind of
Mhm.
started turning the wheels a little bit and being like, okay, so it wasn't that funeral directing wasn't the thing. And it wasn't that I've wasted all this time or what the hell was I thinking my entire life that this was going to be the thing. It was sort of a bridge to get me to all of the things that are happening right now, which is really cool and the kind of thing that like you can't adequately explain that to somebody when they're in the
Right.
middle of like, do I burn it to the ground and dance on the ashes?
Right. It's
You
true.
can't
Yeah.
always talk about
No.
that. Like, you can't always
Yeah.
get that point across. And frankly, if you had said that to me, at that point, I would have just been like, yeah, she's just my friend. She knows that I like this, like whatever. I don't know. I may not have put a lot of
Yeah.
stock in it.
Yeah.
but I'm also
Yeah.
super stubborn. So, I got to figure stuff out when I got to figure stuff out.
Right. Well, I remember when you used to say, when you used to do the transports, you would say, sometimes you had to talk to the family because it was a really hard situation. You said, yeah, no, I will talk to the family. And then they calm down. And I'm like, dude, that's a lot of,
Yeah.
you just stepped right into that role. And I think, your lived experience as a funeral director and dealing with people with grief, I think the fact you wanted to make it deeper, that experience brought it. I don't know if you would have known that just by going to school. The fact that
No,
you did that
yeah.
career,
Yeah,
that's,
absolutely.
yeah,
And I mean, I think it's like that for a lot of people. But of course I'll speak only for myself. Like I'm hands-on, get my hands dirty kind of person. Like I do not learn. I do extremely well in school. I don't read if I don't have to. Like I have to be forced to. When it comes to textbooks and stuff, I don't read from a textbook. I read by doing it. So for me, fortunately, I've always had like kind of a practical application for the things that I was being exposed to in an academic setting. I've always been very, very fortunate to be in that position because I don't really know that I would have been able to learn or certainly absorb all the things that I need to if I
yeah,
wasn't like, okay, so I half read that in a book, but now I'm gonna like totally do it in real life and let's see how that compares. Um,
right,
yeah, it's definitely
yeah,
that's the way that works for me anyways. And I think the funeral industry as a whole, that's kind of like the nature of it. You can't there are certain things you just can't teach somebody. If you think about like hospital medicine, you get
hmm
doctors who are just horrible, and you're just like, how are you a doctor? Like, and you don't know how to speak to somebody, you don't know how to be present with somebody while you give them terrible news or, whatever. And it's the reality is you can't teach bedside manner. There are certain things
no,
that a textbook cannot teach you. I can teach you
mhm,
everything that I know about grief, but if you don't have really the capacity to sort of connect with people or to empathize with them, nothing I teach you is really going to actually translate. It's not going to matriculate in a way that is meaningful.
yeah. What, what, um, what brought you into working with people one on one? Because that's, I mean, when you're working with a family, I know there's a certain amount of time really you're working with them. You're starting, they call you, you're working with them, they move forward
Mhm.
as best they can. But it sounds like you want to get your hands in there a little bit more to work with people one on one after the funeral service.
I do.
So yeah.
So I didn't realize how much I actually really wanted that. So when I was working in the hospital, I dealt with a lot of anticipatory grief. I dealt with a lot of people
Mm,
who were about to, engage in life support cessation. They were in that really, stressful time where they're like, I know what's about to happen. I just don't know when it's going to happen yet. And
mm,
that's, that at that point you're rehearsing and you're, doing all of those terrible, terrible things that humans just can't help but do and just replay the
right.
things over and over. So that was
Yeah.
kind of the anticipatory area of the grief that I've experienced. As a funeral director, I deal with people kind of like in that acute stage, in the sense that somebody has just died or pretty recently died. And it kind of gets to the point where the funeral is, but beyond that, I don't know what happens to anybody. I have a few people who I still reach out to and who I still email with periodically, less now, which I think is a good thing because they're kind of like needing to check in a little bit less, which is I miss them, but it's a good thing for them.
It's a good thing for
That's the
them.
case, so
Yeah.
that's okay. But in thinking about going, one-on-one as opposed to dealing with just families who are grieving at the funeral home, I want to see what happens on the other side of it. I want to see what happens after that like non-linear grief experience starts to come to a conclusion of some variety, because eventually it will. I don't know when. I
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
that I can't say.
Mm,
Um,
no.
but I never get to see that. I never get to see that
Yeah.
moment for anybody. I never get to see the time where they're like, I have the memory of my person and I get to walk with that and I'm okay now. Or I'm as okay as I'm probably going to be, and that's okay. Like that, it just doesn't really happen for me as a funeral director. I have such a small window of time that I can actually interact with, build a rapport, learn to work with, learn to understand as best I can. And then it's like the services are over. Now what?
Right.
And
Now what? Right.
I wonder.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's wonderful that your heart is that big and wanting to see it forward too. I know that there are that role, you have that role of the funeral director, you have that role of the funeral home, the service, but then like everybody's kind of wandering afterwards a little bit, like I know with my dad, when my dad passed, um, the grief came on in weird ways. Like we used to go to Fenway Park together all the time, see a game. So, I was worried about that. Like talk about like not knowing how to handle something. I didn't, so I said, oh, I'll go to a concert. And I happened to see Billy Joel, and I was like, all right, I'm doing okay. Like I'm sitting in the stands, I'm doing okay. And then he started playing that song, The Times to Remember.
Hmm.
Do you know what song? And
Yeah.
I bawled.
Yeah.
Like it just came on me. And I remember like I was with my ex at the time, and he was like, I don't know what to do with you. And I was like, I don't understand what's happening. Like, why am I crying? I should be crying right now. Like I couldn't, but it just hit me all, like the circumstances all hit me at the right time.
Yeah.
And or the wrong time or the right, whatever. But I think it's that's like stuff you don't anticipate. Like, you got to steel yourself through that funeral service, but then like what about those places you used to go together or the things you used to do together?
Yeah.
It's that's gone,
So that's the period of grief that I don't want to say that I like it. No one likes grief.
Yeah.
It's a really terrible thing to say.
Mm-hmm.
That's the period of grief that that's kind of like, that's my pigeonhole. Like, that's the place where I like to be because I think that that's a place that doesn't really get enough attention. So, when
Mm-hmm.
somebody dies or you lose something, it doesn't have to be a person. Death is not all
Mm-hmm.
biological. But
Yeah.
when you have a major loss, whatever it is that you're experiencing, sorry, pollen.
Yeah, okay.
There are swarms of people who just completely envelop you. Everybody who is demanding that they can, well, even if they're not saying they can fix everything, it seems as if they're trying to fix everything for you. It's not necessarily malicious intent by any means, but it's just people not knowing what to do with your grief. So people kind of come
Right.
in and they just swallow you up and they swarm around you and you're entirely protected until the day of the funeral. And then you have, I guess the technical term would be like a repass or a mercy meal. I still call it an after party. You cannot change
Mm-hmm.
about that.
Oh, I love that.
Uh,
Yeah.
I say that actually at funerals, which is not necessarily the thing that funeral directors say, but I like to think that's what it is. So you
I
have
agree.
these people with you. You have this kind of coven of people who have completely enveloped you, and then the after party's over, and you go home, whether you have someone or something to go home to, whatever, all of that is gone. So now you have this period, and I refer to it as the adjustment phase because this is the time where you have to figure out how the hell do I do this? Who the hell am I when this stuff happens? How am I supposed to go to a Red Sox game again? How am I
Mhm.
supposed to ever look Billy Joel in the face again after what happened at that concert? Like,
Exactly.
these are the moments,
Exactly.
and this is the
Yeah.
thing that doesn't really like get enough attention, I don't think, is
No.
in the adjustment phase, that period afterwards, it's like now you have to determine, I didn't realize how big this bed was while I'm the only person who's in it. I didn't
Hmm.
realize how lonely it is to watch TV alone at night. I didn't notice how lonely of an experience it is trying to eat dinner by myself. I didn't realize that I couldn't eat tacos on Tuesday anymore because we always had tacos on Tuesday and now it doesn't feel right. All of these little things, like these are the areas of support. And I say that they're little because I guess like by comparison, they're like kind of little, but they're not because
Right.
these
No.
little nuances, all of these little idiosyncrasies that we experience on a daily basis with our person or our job or whatever it is that we lose,
Yeah.
all of these little things make up who and what we are, and they make up who and what our experience was with what and who we've lost. So by focusing on the adjustment phase, by focusing on that pocket of time right there, it's absolutely crucial because this lays the building blocks for being able to move forward through your grief. Not moving on, BS statement. Hate it when people say it
Yeah.
can't do it. It's not going to happen. It's unrealistic.
Yeah.
But moving forward through that process, like that's the essential period right there. I
Right.
I learned pretty recently. I was talking with somebody about this the other day in a meeting that I'm part of a group in the UK, a grief specialist group, and
Of
they
course
had
you are. Of
mentioned that, of course,
course you are.
there weren't enough in the US, so I had to go over.
No.
Um,
Exactly. You got to be international, my friend. I don't blame you.
so I received an email from the coordinator of that program, and they were like, "Hey, we looked through your website. We noticed that you talk a lot about the adjustment phase, and we have to tell you that over here in the UK, we don't have a single program like that." The closest thing
Ooh,
we have is a program that will work with people who are 6 months bereaved or later. But it's what happens like within the first 6 months. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's the time where support, I'm not going to say is like needed the most because it's different for everybody, but for a lot of people, that's the window of time where support is absolutely essential. And to know that that support isn't out there during that really, really fundamental time, was really jarring for me for as a
yeah,
practitioner and as a provider, to think that like people are just
yeah,
floundering like at a
yeah.
time like that. That's the worst possible time, in my opinion,
Worst
in my
time. It's
experience.
worst time.
Visit theadjustmentphase.com. Let me know what you think in the comments and follow along for more.